Welcome back. I'm Wavepunk, and this is day 45. Hello, how are you guys? It's good to see you. Day 45 of producing for a year, and today we're going to do something a little bit different than I've been doing on previous episodes. We're going to be listening to music. Part of developing as a producer is making music and trying to tinker with your own sounds. It's a huge part, the most important part, but of equal importance to developing your craft is listening and focusing on others who are developing theirs that you admire and trying to understand what they're doing so you can do the things that they do that you like here, right? I listen to hours of music every day, but there's a difference between listening with a critical ear and trying to understand what they're doing and just letting the music be enjoyable. One thing I've learned about myself over the years is that I listen to music for the musical side of things. I don't listen for the production. I don't listen for how did they pan this. I don't listen for, oh, listen to that filter sweeping through here. Oh, what frequencies is that part of the range? When producers talk about being able to hear like, oh, this is in 1,000 hertz, or this is, that's right around 500 hertz or something like that. I have very basic approximations. I kind of have a pretty rough idea of where like A440 is, and I can kind of go off of that. But I really don't know anything else. But that's just not what's important to me, which is what makes that part of production hard for me. So today we're going to do something that I think I'll probably end up doing multiple times over the course of this challenge. Maybe once a week we'll do something like this. I don't know. I like this type of idea. We're going to do this thing where I take a song that I love, one of my favorite songs, and we're going to break it down into some chunks, some categories, and we're going to talk about each one of those chunks individually. I'll play you snippets of the song as well to demonstrate what I'm talking about here. This might be a little bit messy. I'm, again, trying to prioritize making this video easy for me to make, and it's more of a documentation of showing you what I've already learned. I've spent the last 20 minutes or so taking apart and dissecting Double Tap by Going Quantum and Hayve. This is a song I have listened to for hours, not just because I love it and I have it in playlists and I enjoy listening to it when working out or playing video games or even just driving, but I literally have to listen to the song professionally for work.
One match left on the day, and the implications are massive. Strap in. We are careening towards either the end of a streak or the end of a region in Boston. The Tigers of Gen G. They thrive in this environment. Vitality is bristling for another chance to prove themselves. The tournament favorites versus the entire Agganis Arena. Time to prove them right. Gen G versus Vitality for Championship Sunday.
Fun fact, that hype speech I am giving during the music is something I had to write that day, usually moments before it was said, because we don't actually know which teams are going to be competing against each other in the bracket. Anytime on RLCS that you hear me give one of those speeches, that is something I wrote during the last match. I'm paying attention to the game that's happening, but I'm also sitting there writing down the words and then pulling out my phone, pulling up Double Tap, going to the part of the song that we play for the intro, and then practicing it while hearing you guys thunderously applaud over the top of us. It's a wonderful little experience that I get to have. It's just very stressful though, because I do have to come up with good stuff quickly, and then I get to practice it as many times as I need to on my phone to make sure that all the words kind of line up timing wise. So I've listened to this song hundreds of times literally, but never I quite listened to it for the last 20 minutes where I took it, broke it down into its categories of sound, and then listened specifically for their stereo characteristics and frequency characteristics. I'm gonna walk through what I heard in the drums, the pads, the effects, and the kind of melodic content. I don't really focus on bass, as it is true this song, a lot of the melodic content is bass content, so we will talk about some of that there, but generally it seems like bass instruments are just run it straight up the middle. It's pretty monophonic. There will be other bass instruments that go on top. We could talk about those when they feel relevant, but it didn't feel like I needed to really specifically listen to the bass. Maybe that's something we'll do with future tracks. So let's start with the drums here. There's two primary sections to this song, percussion-wise. The pre-drop drums are notably different than the post-drop drums in the way that they fill up the stereo space. So as we start the song, listen for the hi-hat that's kind of ringing up in the top. First thing I notice about that is it doesn't feel like it's straight up the center to me. It feels like it is just 10 degrees to the right. This is going to look like I'm leaning to the left for you guys. It doesn't matter. 10 degrees to one side. And then other elements of the kit also feel a little bit spread out. There's kind of two different percussive elements happening here at the beginning. There's these kind of big drums. The big drums to me feel stereo spread. They don't feel, they're not coming from one side or the other, but they're not dead straight up the center of the mono signal. I think they might be, I don't know. But things like hi-hats and cymbals are spread out. They're not coming up the middle, which is a mistake I see myself making a lot when I'm making music, is having the entire kit be in one instrument, that is, and then I'm moving all of the drums somewhere in the stereo space instead of having different instruments for a drum kit being in different places. So the big sounds, though, do seem to be coming kind of up the middle at us. But those brum brum, those feel more spread out to me. Do you hear them too? The brum brum and then boom, the boom in the middle, the subby boom is clearly just right whacked up the middle. So those brum brums that come right before it, you can feel the difference between them there. Like there's space there, right? So I don't know if that's stereo. I feel like that's stereo widening. The pre-drop really doesn't have any, the build up to the drop really doesn't have any drums in it other than this little, that very subby kick that comes in there. Then we have the drop, which is this is a very drum and bass-esque track, especially in the second drop. These drums are coming straight up the middle. I feel like they did not touch the pan knob. There's not a single element on this plug-in chain that says the word stereo in it anywhere. It is just straight up. I feel like it is coming straight at you, and it's all of them. The cymbal does feel a little wider. The feels a little wider to me than like the kick and snares, but I think that that's just also the characteristic of cymbals. They're just a hissy noise sound that kind of has the whole spectrum, so they're gonna feel a little bit wider there. So that one feels very right up the middle. This song formally does like A, which is pre-drop, and then B of the drop, and then it goes through the A again and the B again. They're a little bit different the second time around, but I think all percussion generally fell into these two categories. I was annoyed at just how well everything punches through. I cannot, spoiler alert, I cannot, with any of the instruments, hear a sidechain compression. So I don't know how he's getting the kick to always punch brilliantly through, how any of the producers on this track are getting all that to do. I don't know what producer did what, but it is frustrating that it's so good. I have no idea how they do that. Moving on to the pads. The pads are possibly spread, not really sure. The pads are really only present in the pre-drop section and a little bit towards the end of the drop. You hear them right here at the beginning. I'm not hearing a lot of stereo movement. The sound itself is pretty active, so it sounds like there's maybe a lot of layers in the sound that are kind of wishy-washy, but they're kind of in the middle. So whether it's just mono or whether it is to the outside, I don't know. I'd have to hear the sound in both to really be able to tell the difference. Try and really closely, though, listen to the pads and hear just how perfectly they're taking up just whatever space everything else isn't. They perfectly fill out the sound while, to my ears, not impeding anything around them. Maybe the look how those crow call effects are overlapping a little bit with the pads, but especially the percussion and bass sounds, especially when we get into the into this pre-build section. So like I'm gonna play the pre-build here for you, and listen. Like in this hand, you've got the bass like womp womp sounds, and in this hand is the pad. Listen to how closely they cut in and out of each other. You could say this is sidechain compression, but it feels too clean. It's like the release is perfect, and most of the time with sidechain, with any type of compression, if you have like a really quick release, it corrupts the sound in some way and it doesn't sound like it is. Okay, so bass, pads. it's you could hear a little like when it's going bomb bomb. It's not like this goes all the way out, right? It's still there, which is the crazier part, right? This is one of the things that makes it really not sidechain compression is that this is still very present. It's not getting quieter when this kicks in. Yet somehow this bass sound, which takes up so much of the frequencies, like it's a very rich sound, is not being impeded at all by this sound. I don't know what they're doing there, but like listen, it's such a well-designed sound. There's some other pads here kind of in the second half of the drop. Way up there. They seem to be occupying a frequency range that isn't really heavily contested by other sounds, and those other sounds that do pop into those ranges, like drums, are way louder, so it's always just giving away to it, so that one's not that complicated, but it's a very sparse section of the piece. So the pads were maybe the most surprising part to me, the part I could not deduce. I was just amazed. I didn't feel like I'd learned anything by listening to those pads. I was just like, yes, I want my pads to sound like this. Please tell me how. I don't know how. So yeah, that was interesting. Moving on to the effects. Let's see, what did I have down? There was kind of two main effects I heard that weren't just like bips and bobs and like kind of like percussion hits that weren't drums. This song and this genre is generally, I think, a little bit less effects heavy than like house or trance, which is the space I've been living in. But this song does have a lot of like intense punchy energy, which is very relevant to the track we are currently working on the Psytrance track. So it felt like a good track to pick apart. We already kind of referenced the crow calls we hear at the beginning. Those sounds. Pow, pow. To me, those are very center. They feel high, but that's because they are high frequencies. And I always hear it as two. I visually see it as two lines doing this, if that makes any sense. They sound a little bit filtered, like they've got a lot of high end knocked off the sound, only because when you compare it to the way the same sound occurs post-drop, there's a big contrast. So here's where they are again, pre-drop. And then here's post-drop. What you know about? It definitely seems like there's a filter put on them in the first half that is missing in the second half, which opens them up. They also feel a lot more spread. Pre-drop ones feel very in the center, while the dropped ones feel more spread out. There's also this like phone call, like bell-like sound. That's the sort of sound effect I do know how to do, just a tone that's kind of like occupied a frequency space that's not particularly busy at that moment, and then having it move really makes it easy for your ear to like pick up on it as it moves from one side to the other. And there's not a lot of sounds really do that. It's also very far back in the mix, so it doesn't pull your attention, which is a normal thing that seems to be the case with any sound that is moving. You don't want it to be like really right up in your face because it's just so attention grabbing. So that's a cool one. Moving on to melodic content. Melodic content's maybe a bit of a mislabel for this particular genre. I'm basically going to categorize any sounds that are the thing your ear grabs onto, and if you were to try and sing the song to someone, you would do it, which in this case is the boom boom wham double tap, right? Which is like a bass and a sample. So not really a melody. I want to talk about the drop particularly because it's the part that kind of is the most enigmatic to me. The rest of it seemed pretty normal, but on the drop, it really feels like, again, the drums are like dead center. They are like middle. They are mono. And yet somehow the bass that is around it, it feels like it's around it. It feels like the drums are coming up the center, and then this like melody is this hug that comes at you from around the edge. That's just how my brain thinks about it. Does that mean stereo width? I think it probably means frequency width, like it's just taking up more of the frequencies than the drums are. But drums, I mean, again, are pretty, like when they hit, it's like not all the frequencies, but like across the entire spectrum, right? So I don't know if it's a contrast there. I am still just, again, amazed at how clear the drums are as they sound. But listen to the way it kind of like sounds like it surrounds the drums. If this makes sense to you. What you know about? What is that? How do they do that? I don't know, because I feel like a lot of times, I think it's just that the sound itself sounds wide, which Reverb definitely helps with that. It's a very reverb heavy sound for sure. But not even. There's not a lot of reverb. Like the note, like once it's clear the synth is stopping the sound, it just doesn't have a lot of a tail to it, which is crazy. There are other things that have reverb, right? With the crow calls we were talking about earlier have a lot of reverb, but the bass itself doesn't. It's pretty clean, and yet still somehow is occupying a space that isn't in your face. The drums feel like I'm listening to a recording of a drum that exists like out of space, where that sounds like I'm in a room and I can hear it bouncing around, even though it stops bouncing pretty quickly. So what were my big takeaways from this? The biggest takeaway I had was listening to their pre-drop percussion not be all up the middle. Go back and listen to the song on your own, and especially at the beginning, you'll notice there's really not a lot going on. There's percussion, there's pads, and then there's the crow calls. That's kind of it. There's some sub stuff happening, but in general, the most interesting part of the track, the thing that kind of drags your ear in, is the percussion. Having the drums occupy more than just the middle mono in a piece that is as sparse in that section there does help a lot. The other thing I took away was not something I can immediately apply, but listening to the pads and hearing the way that they are not interfering with the bass while not appearing to be sidechain compressed. This is when I've said in previous videos that I feel like I'm missing something fundamental. This is one of those moments. The things I know how to manipulate on a sound are volume of the whole thing, the direction, and then volumes of little pieces of it, and like the EQ. So which one of those tools is he using to make the pad not interfere with a sound that I feel like should interfere with it, with that really wide, rich, saturated bass that happens in the pre-drop? I don't know. My guess would be EQ right now if I had to guess one of those three, but I don't know, and I don't know how you would do that exactly. How would you get it to perfectly, unless you're using one of those like fancy new like Soothe or Gullfoss type tools that like just perfectly like takes out the sound of the sound you're trying to like make punch through or something like that. I don't know. It's weird. It's cool. I enjoyed doing this though. Would love to do more of them. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys tomorrow.